Joining us now is former State Department senior advisor Christian Whiton. Christian, what is Russia up to here? What are they doing?
It's unclear. It's possible that this is a prelude to invasion, but that's not the most probable thing that Putin is up to here. More likely, they're trying to send a signal to Ukraine and possibly to the relatively new Biden administration here in the United States. They would either be trying to provoke Ukraine into some sort of reaction that would then justify a Russian invasion of those disputed territories in Donbass. More likely, it's just an attempt to intimidate Ukraine and also to send a signal to the United States. You know, there was a bit of a diplomatic dust-off when President Biden referred to Russian President Putin as a killer. That's extremely unusual diplomatic language. And this is just a way, perhaps, for Russia to remind the United States and NATO that basically it can engage in this kind of activity, threaten or potentially even move into disputed areas of Ukraine. And there's not a lot we can do about it.
I was just going to say, what does the U.S. do in response? Not much?
Well, it's a question of what kind of U.S. interests you see. Ukraine is not part of NATO. People who are, I'd say, Atlanticists and more concerned about Russia would say, well, this is just a prelude. And if you let them do something like this, if they were to move on Ukraine, then, it's an open door and you're just encouraging them to do more. The flip side of that argument is we have extremely serious equities in other parts of the world in dealing with an Iranian regime, but more importantly, in dealing with China, and that getting further enmeshed in Eastern Europe, especially when the Europeans, who have an economy similar to the size of ours, something like 17 times the size of Russia, really ought to be stepping up and playing the role here. So it sort of depends on whether you think the Russian threat is truly critical or merely a nuisance.
You mentioned Iran, Christian. I want to move there now. Yesterday, one of the country's facilities that's used to enrich uranium was the target of a cyber attack. That hack cut power to the underground lab, and Tehran is now labeling that attack as nuclear terrorism and pointing the blame at Israel. This comes as President Biden tries to renew the Iranian nuclear deal, something the Israeli president is not a fan of. So to start us here, Christian, do we know exactly what happened?
We don't know exactly, Joe, but it's interesting that the Israelis didn't issue a denial. They certainly didn't claim credit for it, but some of the statements seem to imply that they were behind it. Some of their newspapers basically saying that Mossad, the Israeli intelligence service, was behind it. This also fits a bit of a pattern. In the previous decade, there was something called Stuxnet. It was believed to be a coordinated cyber attack launched by the United States and Israel against Iran that did something similar, which is to tamper with those centrifuges that can enrich uranium from lower grade up to 80%, where it's a weapons grade. So probably Israel. Also, if you just look at the timing of things, Israel is not happy with the negotiations Biden is undertaking with Iran, the idea of rejoining what they would argue and what many people in both parties in the United States would argue is a heavily flawed deal that, frankly, sanctifies Iran's nuclear program as much as it inhibits it.
Based on your experience with the State Department, do you think this is something Israel would have cleared with the U.S. ahead of time, or at least given the U.S. a heads up?
Not in the current circumstance, no. Secretary of Defense Austin was just in Israel. He was supposedly there to give some confidence to them. That doesn't work anymore. The idea that you're going to appease an adversary of one of our allies, but send a cabinet member to pat them on the head and say everything's okay. So my guess is that probably this would have been undertaken independently. Countries are very protective of their cyber weapons. That's not something that they're going to share. Once you share it, it's out there. Also comes at a politically interesting time in Israel. They've had sort of a series of inconclusive elections where Prime Minister Netanyahu has had difficulty assembling a majority in the Knesset, and he is at that point once again trying to establish a government, having gotten sort of a mixed message from voters. So a show of force against Iran would actually be to his advantage at this point.
Does this reveal our, concerns about power grids being hacked by other countries? Here?
It's very interesting. Centrifuges are extremely sensitive technologies. You're spinning basically different isotopes of uranium in an effort to separate them and get the kind of isotope you need to make a nuclear weapon. That's a little different than sort of the sensitivity of a power grid that we have in the United States, where a little bit of variability wouldn't be catastrophic. But certainly, it does bear in a number of events, including, the recent failure in Texas, does raise questions of how secure the electrical systems on which we rely for modern life are.
Right. Before we let you go, quick question on China now. Billionaire Peter Thiel thinks China might be using the cryptocurrency Bitcoin as a financial weapon against the U.S., and he's a crypto fan. Do you share his concern, and why should we?
Yeah, no, and I was engaged in the conversation when Peter said that, and it's in particular what you can do with crypto is to basically surmount the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency, and that would inhibit our ability to print dollars as we currently are doing with little consequence. If we weren't the reserve currency, you would see inflation when we print dollars and engage in deficit spending. Also, China has something, it's not truly a crypto, it's just a digital version of its own currency that it's experimenting with in China. That's Orwellian. That'll give the government the ability to track every transaction, whether you're buying a pack of gum or a weapon. The government will know, and that's kind of scary.
Former State Department Advisor Christian Whiton, we always appreciate your time and your insight. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe.